Huh? I don't get what am I doing here? Huh? Like, why am I doing here? Huh? This, this looks odd. Really messy. Really, yeah, a little messy. I don't wait. That's not showing life. Ugh, I could picture myself not doing that. Oh, there's a veil plate. Hmm.
My Hero is a show that has gone on for a pretty long time now. It's created a lot of side characters, which is fine. It makes a lot of really good characters, but it had an unfortunate side effect. Because of how many new characters got introduced, I feel the show ended up sidelining characters early on. This is especially true for the students in Class 1A. Students of Class 1A were introduced as a bunch of side characters that fans kind of latched onto pretty quickly, They got really excited on the potential for a lot of these characters, and they wanted to see what they ended up doing as the show progressed. And to be fair, a
Yeah,
lot
it's
of these
me.
characters did get a lot of attention, some more than others, but some of them also ended up being pretty great. You could say that any one of them is an underused character though. Because of how many characters there are, so many of them end up getting pushed to the side to make room for a different character that got introduced in a later arc, or to just push the main cast of characters. And by main cast, I mainly mean like Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki, and a little bit of Uraraka. I think some of these side characters ended up getting it worse than a lot of others. And I think the one that got the shortest end of the stick in the end was Tsuyu Asui.
Yeah, it's kind of true, though.
Now, you might be a little surprised because Sue is a character who is immediately a fan favorite once she gets
Yeah, everybody
introduced.
likes
She's a
me.
character that ends up getting a pretty decent amount of screen time in the early seasons, so you wouldn't expect her to be like this super underused character compared to like Sato, Sugar Man, who, like, I don't even know if he has more than 5 lines of dialogue or something. Like, that's a character that isn't used very well. But in this context, I'm gonna break it down a bit more to explain why I think Sue is the most underused character in the show. So, who is Tsuyu Asui, also known as Froppy? Basically, she's honestly one of the first side characters that we really get a push into focusing on. She's introduced as a pretty chill and mellow girl that is pretty friendly with Deku almost immediately. And then we get more info about her in the USJ arc when she saves Deku from a shark villain. And here we kind of get a pretty good basis on who Froppy is as a character, and I think this is kind of where everyone kind of fell in love with Froppy. On the surface, she appears to look a little awkward and secluded because of her blank expression all the time, but really she's actually super friendly and very chill, and she actually has like a really amusing sense of humor. We see this a lot whenever she's talking to Deku, and she's correcting him by telling him not to call her Asui and instead call her Sue, because she's immediately on friendly terms with Deku and wants to establish that.
Tsuyu Asui, but please, call me Sue.
What is it, Asui?
I told you to call me Sue.
Oh, yeah, right. You saved my life, Asui.
I told you to call me Sue.
We end up learning
call me
what her quirk
Sue,
is.
Deku.
Her quirk
Do you know
is
what
pretty much
character you're supposed to
just
call me,
frog.
like, Sue?
Like, she is a frog
Damn,
person.
man.
It's a
I
very
don't know what Deku keeps
amusing
mistaking
quirk
me
that
for
has like a lot of
Asui.
versatility to it, because although it is one quirk, she ends up having like multiple abilities that are stacked on top of it because of the fact that frogs can just do a lot of stuff. She can like stick onto walls, she can jump super high, she has like a super long and versatile tongue. She can secrete like a mucus that has a bit of an acidicness to it that doesn't end up getting used in the USJ arc though. And same with her ability to spit out her stomach. So with both
What?
her
What do you mean by
appealing
that?
personality, her
I can
really
do that?
useful and interesting
can I do
quirk,
that?
and the fact that her design just is really good, she immediately
Yeah,
becomes like
I
a
look
fan
cute.
favorite from the start.
never
And
really
in the
wanna hang out with
USJ
me and
arc,
the
we
mom.
see her execute her abilities with Deku forming a plan around them, and they work as a pretty good team. They kind of establish their friendship from this. And other than Uraraka and Ida, Froppy pretty much becomes the first friend of Deku that isn't part of like the main cast. Okay, now that we've established who Froppy is, we need to kind of go over more on why she's underused, because right now she's used pretty well. I think the best way to do this is to go by it from arc to arc and see like how she is utilized in each arc as they go.
Yeah.
USJ arc, she's used great. You know, she's pretty much like a straight up, perfectly utilized character in that arc. There's not really any complaints there. Now, after the USJ arc, we then enter into Season 2 of My Hero Academia. And in Season 2, we start the season with the Sports Festival, where most of the students at UA kind of get a little bit of room to shine as characters. They all kind of do something, right? Some characters get super sidelined though, but it's kind of okay because like the arc is meant to focus on some more specific characters that haven't gotten much focus yet. So I don't really mind that certain members of Class 1A end up getting a bit more sidelined than the others because it's kind of already doing its job of opening up Class 1A anyway. Now, Froppy is kind of immediately sidelined in this arc. She does, like, have a couple of quirky moments, but, you know, it's not really a big deal. It's a shame she didn't get very far into the sports festival, but it's okay. Now, as we move forward
because,
with
you know,
the
Deku
season,
won,
we then end up
and
at the
I'll
Hero
wait
Killer
till-
Stain arc,
Fuck it.
and this arc is pretty much to fully
Coyote,
establish and explore Tenya Ida's character, and so Froppy kind of doesn't do a single thing in this arc, which is fine. You know, it's to focus on a different member of Class 1A. It's not really a big deal, and she is just not a part of it. That's fine. It's a great arc. It focuses on Ida, makes him a great character. It's not a big deal. Then we get into the final exams arc. This is where we get back to more Froppy action. We see her team up with Tokoyami, and they're assigned to basically put like cuffs on one of the teachers at the school. So they team up and they win. In this test, Tsu is shown to utilize her quirk very well. She's very maneuverable and she's fast, and she's immediately established with Tokoyami as being a team player. She works really well with other people, and that's kind of her biggest strength, I would say, and something that they keep bringing up as, you know, we see her character is she's always perfect at working with others. That's kind of her bread and butter. Oh, also, I forgot to mention this. In Season 2, Froppy gets her own dedicated filler episode, which is entirely just focused on her working with some ocean-based pro heroes, and she just kind of has her own little adventure to do something. And it's, you know, it's
That's
pretty cool
cute,
for a
though.
filler
Yeah,
episode.
they
You get to
look
focus on a
nice.
side character just be capable on their own, you know? It's something that I kind of appreciate out of a filler episode, especially for in My Hero with any of these side characters. But honestly, I think as a filler episode, it's a little overrated because even though we get to focus on Froppy, we don't really learn anything about her. She doesn't really like have anything like amazing to do. She kind of just like, you know, fights the bad guy and wins, and that's kind of
It was a
really
filler
not that
episode.
deep.
There was nothing else
Now
to do.
after
That's what they
this, we then
did.
end up in the forest training camp arc. At the start of this arc, it's mainly just focused on Class 1A training, and then they get jumped by the League of Villains, and so a lot of the members of Class 1A get something to do in this arc. Froppy, though, she kind of just hangs around with Uraraka, because before they establish that Uraraka and Froppy, they get along really well, they end up being kind of like best friends, and so this is the start of Froppy pretty much just being Uraraka's support character. character. We get
And
introduced
also,
to
don't question the
Kimiko
fact that we're
Toga,
not in
who
love.
ends up being
You don't ship us.
the main
I can
integral
always
character
tell no
for
friend if I'm willing
Ochako
to fight to that.
Uraraka's overall character arc throughout, like, the whole show. And Froppy is here pretty much just being a character that is here to just protect Ochako and support her. And this, like, kind of relationship and this dynamic with Toga remains this way throughout the show progresses. When Toga meets Tsu, she immediately likes Tsu and wants to be her friend, and kind of, in a way, immediately assumes that they're friends because of, you know, Toga's weird way of understanding friendship. And Tsu is obviously alarmed by this and rejects Toga, says, no, we're not friends, we're not friends, how dare you call me Tsu, you can't do that, only my friends call me Tsu. Which again is pretty relevant to what we're gonna learn about Tsu a little later on, because this kind of it makes sense for a character to be like this. So Toga, Tsu, and Uraraka have a bit of a scuffle, and then it's just kind of doesn't go anywhere after that. Toga leaves, and then they just move on. But after this, we then go to the Hideout Raid arc, which is, you know, the arc where they have to save Bakugo from the League of Villains. And this arc is actually, it's probably the most important arc for Tsu's characterization, and it ends up giving her her best moment in the whole show, in my opinion. So after Bakugo gets kidnapped by the League of Villains, Todoroki and Kirishima go to Deku and say to him that they plan on saving Bakugo. A few of Class 1A ends up, you know, rejecting this idea, thinking, no, it's too dangerous, just leave it to the teachers and to All Might, right? But interestingly enough, the main person in the class that ends up telling them not to do this and makes a big statement for it is Tsu. Tsu basically says to Deku and the group that if they go out trying to save Bakugo, that they are acting selfishly, like a villain would be, and they're not obeying the rules, and that they should just obey the rules. And this is interesting coming from Tsu because it's kind of a harsh thing to say to them, which is interesting because this is kind of the first time Tsu is really shown as being this kind of harsh. She's always been very supportive of her friends' decisions and kind of like goes along with what they want to do. This is in line with Tsu because she is known to be very blunt, which is a part of her sense of humor is her bluntness. But here we see it in a much more serious context. Now, after she says this, obviously Deku and the group ignore her warning and they go anyway to try and save Bakugo. And so then the rest of the Hideout Raid arc happens, they save Bakugo, All Might beats All for One, it's a whole thing. And then once all the dust is settled and they're back at school, the school is now assigning everyone to have their own dorm rooms for their safety. And we get the episode where it's kind of like a filler episode, sort of, not really. It's kind of just Class 1A going into everyone's dorm rooms and just making jokes about them and getting a little bit of fun characterization out of each character. However, you'll notice that there is one character, other than Bakugo obviously, that does not get out of their room and doesn't join in on the fun with the rest of the class, and that is Tsu. Tsu eventually opens up to Uraraka and starts explaining her feelings to her about why she wasn't having fun with all of them. And she explains that she was, I think, the only person in the class that didn't know that Deku and the group went out to save Bakugo. And when she learns this, she is in distraught because in that moment, she felt completely powerless. So Tsu ends up feeling really bad about what she said to them before they went out to save Bakugo. But she felt that she had to in order to protect her friends from getting themselves hurt, right? It was like an emotional sacrifice. But when she learns that they went out and did it anyway, she feels guilty, both for the fact that she said something harsh to her friends, and also because her words weren't strong enough to stop them from getting in trouble. And so she feels like she can't protect her friends. And so that's why she didn't hang out with them and have fun with them, because she feels like a bit of a failure. And then the reason why she opens up to them about this and explains explains how she's feeling is because she misses them so much that even though she feels guilty, she wants them to know how she's feeling and wants to make amends and be close with them again. And this interaction is one of the most important moments in the whole show for understanding Sue as a character. It's probably the most important part in the show for Sue, because here we're understanding that Sue deeply values friendship and the emotional crutch that she has surrounding that and her relationship with her friends, which is kind of interesting because this is kind of like her character flaw in a way. Essentially, she values friendship so much that she has an emotional baggage tied to it. Without her friends, she feels helpless or alone, which is probably her greatest fear. Now, I feel I actually have an answer to why Sue is like this. Why does Sue value friendship so much? Why does she get so emotionally affected by a lack of friends? What's the deal? We see what its effect on her is, which is great, but we don't know where it comes from. But I think I know exactly where it comes from. See, there is this OVA for My Hero Academia that came out, I think, in between season 2 and 3. I wouldn't be surprised if none of you have even heard of this OVA. It doesn't even have a dub, which is kind of a shame that I feel no one has seen this, because I'm gonna be honest, this might be the single most important piece of My Hero media that completely explains Froppy as a character. How is that possible? It's just a silly little OVA, right? It's pretty much just a little filler story about Class 1A just having a little training arc and a little zombie infection thing happens. It's really goofy, it's really silly, it's, really not important in that way. But at the start of the episode, gets set up with Froppy's backstory, which is insane that it happens in this and not in the main show, by the way. So what we learn about Froppy is basically she is very family oriented. She has her whole frog family, and they're all a very loving family, right? But her parents end up having to be away most of the time for work. And so Froppy, being the big sister and all, has to take care of her little siblings most of the time. So she's inherently grown to be a very caring and supportive person for her younger siblings. Now, at the same time, while at school, we see that apparently Froppy has a real big problem with making friends. All the other kids in the class they don't really talk to Sue. Because of her appearance, she seems really blank and unconventional because of, how her quirk affects her appearance. And so people are weirded out by her. They don't really want to talk to her, which made Sue very lonely. And then one day, Froppy notices a girl named Habuko Mongoose, who is a girl with a snake head, and she's just a girl that just stares at Froppy a lot and just stalks her a bit, because for the most part she feels that she is very similar to Sue and finds her a little relatable. Being a heteromorphinal, being judged for her appearance, having it difficult to make friends, she immediately is attracted to Sue and wants to be her friend. And Sue just clocks that and realizes that's what's going on with this girl. And since at the time Sue also has no friends and sees the non-malicious intent behind Habuko, she immediately offers her friendship to her. And this makes sense because of how Sue inherently values closeness with people and her older sister Nature. She is inherently kind and caring for other people because of the way how she is at home. And so immediately after asking the mongoose girl to be her friend, the girl accepts and they both become best friends. And so they both have a bit of their own little journey of making friends, and they both highly value friendship because of the fact that they used to have no friends. This little silly scene at the start of this random goofy ass filler episode completely explains Tsuyu Asui as a character. and contextualizes her characterization for the rest of the show, which is insane to me. So because of what we just learned, we now understand why Tsu has been the way she is throughout the whole show so far. Why Tsu latched onto Deku when she first met him. Why she was like, hey, don't call me Asui, call me Tsu. She was trying to make a strong connection with Deku and to be his friend because of how strongly she values that friendship. And she ends up doing this with like most of the other students in the class even. And we understand why she's always playing support for other characters, because she cares about other people. That's pretty much why I think she wants to be a hero, because of the fact that she naturally just grew up wanting to support her siblings and how she ends up supporting her childhood friend. That's just kind of what she wants to do. She wants to help people. And so that's why she wants to be a hero. And so when she couldn't help someone like Deku and Ida and Todoroki and all that, that's when she feels at her lowest, because that is her, at her core, being challenged. Okay, so now that we've talked all about that, let's talk about what happens with Froppy after the Hideout Raid arc. Now, this is where things start going a little downhill for Tsu, unfortunately. We get the Provisional Hero License Exam arc. I'm not gonna lie, I genuinely just don't remember Tsu doing anything in this arc. Oh, right, she was with Momo, and she was kind of relevant for like Momo's little personal filler arc. Now this isn't that bad actually, because honestly, Momo is also one of the most underused characters in the show as well. You'll notice it's mostly the girls that end up getting the most underused in this show. So after the Provisional Hero License exam, we then get into the overhaul arc. Now, in this arc, Froppy actually does have stuff to do. She's actually one of the few characters in Class 1A that is assigned to be part of the main group of heroes to raid the Shihasakai. Okay, sorry, hang on a second. I'm completely butchering the way how that's pronounced. It's pronounced the Shie Hasaikai. My bad. To save Eri, right? Because the characters that end up being part of this arc from Class 1A are Deku, Uraraka, Kirishima, and Tsu, surprisingly. Unfortunately, Tsu doesn't really do a lot. Tsu does get to be part of the fight, but she's mainly just a support character. Though, to be fair, for the overhaul arc, the side character in the classroom that is meant to be the character that you're getting more content for is Kirishima. I'm actually okay with the fact that Tsu doesn't really have a lot to do in this arc, because we already just introduced Lemillion, who's super important to this arc, and Tamaki, and at the same time, we're getting Kirishima, who is a member of Class 1A, and this is like his big character moment in this arc, you know? So it's a lot to expect for Tsu, right? So it's okay, it's not that bad. But then after this, we then get to the UA School Festival arc, aka the Gentle Criminal arc. This arc's a super low stakes arc. It's a really good arc, in my opinion. I think it's really underrated. But for the most part, it's a super low stakes arc, kind of like as a breather for after the super tense overhaul arc. So all the side characters are pretty much just having fun at this school festival and getting ready for a big song and dance, right? So I'm fine with Tsu not having a super huge thing to do in this arc. Really only just about Deku. Then after this, we get the joint training arc in season 5. Now this arc is also pretty low stakes. It's Class 1A and Class 1B having a big joint training battle where there's 5 teams on each class, where they gotta fight each other and cage each other up like heroes and villains, right? It's a really low stakes arc. However, I think it is probably one of the best arcs in the show for showcasing the side characters. This entire arc pretty much just exists to showcase all the stuff that they have learned over time and how they've utilized their quirks in new ways. That's fantastic. That's exactly what I wanted to see out of this show and for the side characters in Class 1A. Characters that end up getting some pretty good moments are like Monoma, Momo, Kendo, Ida, and Shinso. Most of the students get to do something. A couple don't, but for the most part they do. Now, Tsu is in the first match of the arc. She is part of the same team as Shinso, Denki Kaminari, Hiroshima, and Koda. And now, in my opinion, I think this match with Tsu in this arc is probably the best fight that utilizes Tsu. Throughout this match, Tsu is being extremely cooperative and working really well with her team. Better than pretty much any of the other team members, right? They come up with a plan to have Tsu use her mucus that we, introduced in the
Don't
first
get any
season
freaky
that we
ideas,
never
you
did
guys.
anything
Of
until
course,
now
what's
with.
sort of
So there's a guy that
substance
they're
to
fighting
your
who has a
little
quirk that
penis
lets him
and your-
smell where
yeah,
they are, right? So that they can't
Don't you get any
hide from it.
freaky ideas?
So what they do is they utilize Tsu's quirk to secrete that mucus. She's going to use that quirk to cover them in her mucus so that they can hide their scent, and so they all just kind of smell like they're all froppy. So they can't actually figure out which person is the actual person with which quirk. So they can't strategize properly. And this is a great application of a quirk that she has that they've never used before. And then Tsu is just kind of immediately being super badass when she's fighting them. By the way, I forgot to mention, earlier on, Tsu improved her quirk where she could learn how to camouflage and basically turn invisible, which is super OP that she has this many abilities that she can do. And because of how quick she is, she manages to dodge the scale bullet guy, and because of her camouflage quirk and how fast she is, she immediately gets the jump on him, kicking his ass. And then later on, Tsu ends up utilizing the fact that the other team members can't talk to each other because of Shinso's quirk, and so she uses that to her advantage and starts using the scales guy to attack the beast man and win them the match. So Tsu ended up working really well with Shinso and the rest of the team. I think this is probably Tsu's best use in any fight in the show to this day. Now after this arc, we then have My Villain Academia, which is, focusing on the villains of the show. Tsu's obviously not a villain, so she's obviously not part of this arc, so moving. We then get to the Endeavor Agency arc, which primarily just focuses on Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki training with Endeavor. Tsu doesn't really do anything in this arc, but she does have a bit of a filler episode with Uraraka as the main focus, where they're training together with their agency that they are a part of. They have a bit of a beach episode that turns into them kind of working as a team to do some hero work. It's fine, but it's a shame that we didn't get to see more of this and in more serious context, And now we have the Paranormal Liberation War arc, and I don't think Tsu does anything in this arc. I'm gonna be real. She pretty much just kind of runs around trying to help, and that's kind of it. This is where I think they have officially decided that Tsu is no longer getting focus in the show. But there's a point to this arc that I want to make. There's a character in this arc that gets quite a big focus at the start of the arc who I think shouldn't. And that character is Mirko. Mirko is the number 5 hero of Japan. She has a bunny quirk, which lets her have very strong legs, and her whole thing is that she's very confident in herself, and she loves to fight, and she just wants to fight, and that's her thing, right? That's what she cares about. Now, I really do not like Mirko. Now, that's a hot take. A lot of fans really like Mirko, but I'm gonna be honest with you. I think it's purely because of her character design. As a character, Mirko has genuinely no character. Actually. Mirko's whole deal is that she thinks she's better than everyone. She thinks she's the best. She thinks she's super strong. She loves to fight and just fight and whatever. That's her entire character. Genuinely her entire character. She is literally just season 1 Bakugo, but with none of the character development. She remains this way for the rest of the show, and that's that. But why am I bringing this up? Why am I bringing this up? Mirko
Why?
gets a big focus at the start of this arc. She is essentially the one who is assigned to go and stop Shigaraki from waking up, right? So she goes in fighting all these Nomus and, you know, destroying the casing that Shigaraki is in. And it's like a big, super well animated fight scene. It's a whole thing, right? Now here's my problem. I really feel that Mirko should not have been the focus here. I genuinely feel like you can describe Mirko as a one-dimensional character. My issue with Mirko is the fact that in this fight scene, in this arc, she gets so much focus and so much attention and so much budget into this big epic fight scene for her. However, I think all this focus and budget is wasted on her. Essentially, I think it's a waste to have all this attention and budget be put on a character who is barely even a character. We don't use this time to establish Mirko as a great character and we get to learn more about her or anything. We don't get any of that. She remains one-dimensional. The only benefit is that the fight looks cool, and it does look cool. However, I think you could have really just easily swapped Mirko out with any other character and it would have been better. Because if you had focused on a different character, like a character we already care about, you see where I'm going with this, then we could focus on that character that we already have investment in, and we get to give them a great moment with great animation and a great fight scene or whatever. I know what you're thinking. You're not suggesting that you swap out Mirko with Froppy, are you? That's exactly what I'm suggesting. Now hold on. I get that Mirko is literally the number 5 hero. Froppy is a student. It would be weird to have Froppy do this task in her place, right? It wouldn't make sense for the pro heroes to make Froppy do this. In my opinion, I think you could pretty easily just write the situation to make it so, oh, Froppy's in the area, someone got hurt and got down, and the only hero that can go in time and stop Shigaraki from getting woken up could be maybe Froppy. And I feel like if you had written a situation like that, not only do you create a situation where you can have basically the exact same looking fight scene, but with a good character. Why do I think the fight scene would pretty much play out the same? Because Froppy has basically the exact same quirk as Mirko. Like, her quirk is just, she is an animal that is known for jumping, and so she's really good with her legs, which is exactly the same as Froppy, except she has like a million more quirks. Heck, she can go invisible. Like, the Nomus wouldn't even be able to find her, and right? So I feel like having this part of the arc focus on Mirko and having no material for Tsu throughout this whole arc is a big mistake that could have easily have been fixed if we had swapped out Mirko with Froppy. Oh, also, I forgot about one thing that Tsu does in this arc. Tsu ends up joining Uraraka in a moment where they have to fight Toga, and this is important because Tsu is kind of on the same wavelength of Ochako, in where she's kind of understanding Toga a bit more. But again, it's really only about Ochako learning about Toga.
Yeah,
Tsu
we only
is
know
again
that
just used here as support for Uraraka, right? It's
story
cool that
behind
she's
it
here,
being
but this is like the
myself.
only thing she does in this arc.
Now,
Now, after the Paranormal Liberation War, we then get into like the Dark Deku arc. This arc is mainly just purely about Deku. Obviously, Froppy's not going to be around because, you know, no one is around in this arc except Deku. However, we do have a big moment at the end of this arc where all of Class 1A has to basically try and take down Deku. Fantastic episode where every member of Class 1A gets to have a little moment with Deku and, you know, express their emotions to him and explain why they value him as a friend, why they care about him and stuff. It's really good. And Froppy gets a great moment like this. She really opens up to Deku and starts just talking about how she really values him and how she feels emotional just like he does and relates to him and cares about him and all that, right? It's a really good moment. I think she's used perfectly in this episode. Her emotional connection with Deku, I think, is one of the more stronger connections out of the classroom. So she's good in this. And now we're into the final war arc. Here's the thing, so many characters get to do stuff in the final war arc, right? And some side characters that you wouldn't expect end up getting some cool moments as well. Like, Shoji ends up being great in the final war arc, which is pretty surprising. Unfortunately, like, really unfortunately, Sue genuinely doesn't do anything in this arc. It's a real shame. Like, really
Why
big
though,
shame.
guys?
Sue
Come on,
is pretty
Ryder.
much just
I'm the best
used
character, and
as
then you treat me like
support
shit.
for
I am the
Uraraka's
best
arc. And now,
character, and you
listen,
be
Uraraka's
treating me like
arc with
shit.
Toga
Like, what
is
the heck
great.
is wrong with y'all?
I love it.
I'm a
It's one of the
great
best
character.
parts of
You
season
risking
7 to
my
me. I think it's probably the
character
best
by
like moment in season
overdoing
7.
this.
Sue, however, she is pretty much just around
Ow,
to
that
say,
kinda looks
hey,
painful, me getting
Toga,
slapped by
listen
that.
to Uraraka. She just wants to talk to you. And that's kind of all she's used at. She saves Deku for like a moment. There's a moment before where she kind of like jumps in and like saves Deku for a moment. But again, it's really like kind of superficial. Froppy really doesn't have anything to do. She's pretty much just playing support, which makes sense for Sue's character. She's always been playing support and has always been supporting Uraraka throughout this whole time. Yeah, in the final war arc with the big fight with Ochako and Toga, Sue is just kind of there, right? She's just around.
Ow.
And this is the biggest shame for me, because I feel like with such a huge arc like the final war arc, with so many side characters ending up getting attention, I'm really upset that Sue ended up being probably one of the most sidelined characters in the whole
Ow,
arc.
what
Maybe
did
it's
they
because the
get
show
with it?
felt that we had already spent enough time
Man,
with Sue in the
no,
past that it was
why?
time that we
Come
focused
on.
on, you know, characters like Shoji or Aoyama or even like Invisible Girl. But I really am
Invisible Girl with her freaking
Sue
really good
didn't
cute,
have
but
anything
also
to do with this
no.
arc. Sue obviously is part of the group of friends of Deku that assist him when he's about to beat like final boss
Dang, I look
Shigaraki at the
some
very
beat up
end
with that-
of
in that
the whole
picture.
show. You see her family
Man,
cheering her
look
on,
at my
and then
family.
that's the rest of Froppy. Now, I think there's a point that I need to bring up that you're probably wondering. Why do I think Froppy is the most underused character when clearly we've gone through a bunch of stuff Froppy has done throughout the whole show, when there are other characters that have done way less than her, like Sato or like Ojiro, right? How come those characters aren't the most underused in the show? What makes Froppy the most? Because Froppy is still, you know, given a lot of material, sort of. Well, it's because I don't think the most underused character in the show is the one with the least material. I think Froppy is the most underused because early on in the show, she's introduced as a side character that immediately becomes a fan favorite, and we get to
Yes,
get
okay.
more scenes
I'm a
with
fan
her, and
favorite.
we, you know, get to
Emma
spend more
likes
time
me.
with her, and she's
Just
just kind of a
glad that they
staple
don't
side
waste my
character that's
character.
always
Well, the
around,
fact that they
who
could never
we
give it
always
potential.
are
I never get
expecting
potential.
something to happen with her. That's my main point here, is that I feel the show wants Froppy to be more important to the plot than she actually is. And she's not the only one that ends up being sidelined, it's most of the characters end up being sidelined. Look at Yaomomo, she doesn't end up doing anything in the final war arc. Kirishima ends up, like, he genuinely does nothing in the final war arc. He actually might do less than Sue does. All these characters end up getting sidelined. But the reason why I think Froppy got the most sidelined is because she is presented as a character with so much potential that we are led to assume is going to be given more material and given more characterization as the show goes on, and she doesn't. Sure, Ojiro may not do anything in the whole show, but Sue is a character where we are led to believe she's going to be very important. She never gets anything as big as Ida or Kirishima, right? She just kind of is middling throughout the whole show and just ends up not doing anything at the end. And so that's why I think she is the most underused character, because of the fact that she should have been used the most. But what does this mean for Sue's character? Does this make her a bad character because of
No.
how underutilized she is? No, I don't think so. Sure, some characters you can say aren't that great because they barely have any material and they're very underused. You can judge them based on how much characterization they get. I get that, right? Maybe if Mirko got more to do in the show, she probably would have gotten more characterization. We might have learned maybe about her deeper emotional motivations or anything that makes her relatable or likable or anything like that, and it could have made her a good character. right? But we ended
No,
up
no
not
one
getting that.
cares.
And also, I feel like if she did get
Nobody
more, they probably
cares
wouldn't have
about
added
her.
anything complex to her
Really.
character anyway.
Nobody
So with
cares.
Sue, even though she's underutilized, I do think she's a great character. I don't think it's necessarily the amount of use a character gets that makes them a good or bad character. I think it depends on how much context you have for the character. For example, Star and Stripe is a character that only exists 2 episodes, right? We learn a little bit about her backstory, about her motivation, and we learn a little bit about how her powers work. Such a little bit. She only does like 4 things with her powers, right? Yet, Star and Stripe is fantastic. Star and Stripe is genuinely a great character, right? And so think about that in the context with Sue. What we know about Sue
Well,
is
it's not her
she's
fault
got
that
a great
she
quirk. She's
died.
got a great character
least she got a
design. She's
DLC
really
character
likable
class
with a
in,
very quirky
that one
personality.
game.
And we understand her motivation and her character flaws. She's a girl that grew up with no friends who really valued the closeness of individuals and being
Look,
very
I'm doing
family
something
oriented.
there.
So
Is
when
that not
she
enough?
got friends,
Well, there's
she
my
clinged
family.
onto their needs and
still,
wanting to
it's
support
not
her
enough.
friends and wanting to be an emotional shoulder to cry on for those friends. And that is
So that's
her
being
main
ground up.
values. And so that is a unique perspective that Sue has over other characters in the show. And so I think that makes her a valuable character for the show. And even though My Hero Academia is over, I hope we see Sue again soon.
Yeah, it's not enough for me. Man, because for Santa, I'm not being used that much in the show. But it's not my fault. It's the writer's fault. They just treat me like that. Anyway, I'm gonna continue going somewhere.